וכשהלילה תם והשמש מאירה, את תדעי מה לעינינו נראה. עצים סביב, רמי צמרת, החרוכי גזע, בתים גדולים סביב, החרוסים הם דהויי צבע, מעליך על הריסות אני אימא, ותאמיני לי אין כאן שום אגס ואין כאן פרח. לא גיבורים אנחנו, כי מלאכתנו שחורה, תשקע השמש תבוא העלתה, ואז ננום בבגדנו במיטה. כן אמא זה חשוב, זה קשה וזה נורא. לא גיבורים אנחנו, כי מלאכתנו שחורה, תשקע השמש תבוא העלתה, ואז ננום בבגדנו במיטה. כן אמא זה חשוב, זה קשה וזה נורא. בחיי שזה קשה, אך אני נשאר, אפורה האדמה ושחור האופק, וכחול שמיים כאילו משתהה, והוא ממתין ולא נוגע, הוא לא נוגע באופק השחור. ביניהם חלל, שום קשר וכל השאר, וזה קשה מאוד אך אני נשאר. יש כאן גדר תיל ואחריה חרב שנופה, אמא אבא וכל השאר. לא גיבורים אנחנו, כי מלאכתנו שחורה, תשקע השמש תבוא העלתה, ואז ננום בבגדנו במיטה. כן אמא זה חשוב, זה קשה וזה נורא. לא גיבורים אנחנו, כי מלאכתנו שחורה, תשקע השמש תבוא העלתה, ואז ננום בבגדנו במיטה. כן אמא זה חשוב, זה קשה וזה נורא. וכשהלילה תם והשמש מאירה, את תדעי מה לעינינו נראה, מה לעינינו נראה, מה לעינינו נראה, מה לעינינו נראה.
Tonight, on the eve of Israel's 73rd year of independence, we once again gather here on this difficult day to remember those who have fallen in defense of the state of Israel and those members of our people who were murdered in brutal acts of terror in Israel and around the world. There are some who say that Yom Hazikaron is a uniquely Israeli day, and there is truth in that belief, truth which comes from the special obligations and heavy price paid far too often by Israeli families whose loved ones fell in defense of our homeland. Yet it is also a day when Am Yisrael stands together, as I stand here with you today, shoulder to shoulder, representing the Jewish community of Ottawa. We too join our Israeli brothers and sisters in honoring the memory of those who fell in the defense of the state of Israel and in acts of terror. We weep and deeply mourn together with the citizens of Israel as one family. And on this solemn day, we stand together in unity and mark the loss of members of our people who were killed in vicious acts of terror abroad. And how sad it is that these attacks still continue. This year marks 73 years since Israel's independence. Independence we had hoped would be celebrated by remembering the fallen of the past while living in peace. Unfortunately, our soldiers and civilians are still at risk. Sadness and tragedy are still upon us. It is a day to remember and reflect on those who have paid the ultimate price so that the state of Israel can be what it is today. It is a day to remember and console those who have lost their loved ones. It is also a day to remember and be grateful to the men and women who continue to protect the state of Israel. A nation who remembers its fallen is a strong nation. Once a year in Israel, the country stops. It stops to remember and honor the fallen and the brave. Restaurants and shops close. Television stations dedicate their airtime to documentary films on Israel's wars, and the names of the fallen scroll down the screen for what seems like hours on end. As the flag of independence is unfurled upon the pole, the nation of Israel stands as one in memory of its fallen. יום הזיכרון לחללי מערכות ישראל מוקדש להתייחדות עם זכרם של חללי המחתרת, חללי צבא הגנה לישראל, נפגעי פעולות האיבה וחללי כוחות הביטחון אשר נפלו למען תקומתה והבטחת קיומה של מדינת ישראל. יום הזיכרון חל מדי שנה יום לפני יום העצמאות, משקיעת החמה ועד לצאת הכוכבים למחרת. ביום הזיכרון נחשפת בעוצמה מחודשת הזיקה הכואבת שבין עצמאות לשכול. ביום הזיכרון דגלי המדינה מורדים לחצי התורן, עונדים תג דם המכבים, מתקיימים טקסי זיכרון ממלכתיים ופרטיים במוסדות חינוך וציבור, במחנות צה"ל ולרגלי אנדרטאות ואתרי זיכרון ברחבי המדינה. בשנים האחרונות מתקיים טקס הנחת דגלון זיכרון על קברו של החלל שנפל אחרון. We are in our second Yom HaZikaron during COVID. All of us have felt the pain of being separated from our loved ones because of restrictions. I have not seen one of my daughters for over 6 months. This pain is temporary, and I can still talk to her on the phone as often as I wish, but it is painful. Now close your eyes and imagine that this separation is permanent. This is the pain the families of the fallen face daily. May we pray that next year no new families will feel this pain. אחת לשנה ביום הזיכרון הלאומי זוכר עם ישראל כולו בלב אחד את חובו ומביע את רגשותיו לבניו ובנותיו שמסרו נפשם להשגת עצמאות המדינה להבטחת קיומה. If you can, please rise for the lowering of the flag and a moment of silence.
יזכור עם ישראל את בניו ובדותיו הנאמנים והאמיצים, חיילי צבא ההגנה לישראל, וכל לוחמי המחתרות וחטיבות הלוחמים במערכות העם, ואנשי קהילות המודיעין, הביטחון, המשטרה ושירות בתי הסוהר, אשר חירפו נפשם במלחמה על תקומת ישראל. וכל מי שנרצחו בארץ ומחוצה לה בידי מרצחים מארגוני הטרור. יזכור ישראל ויתברך בזרעו, ויבל על זיו העלומים וחמדת הגבורה, וקדושת הרצון ומסירות הנפש של הנספים במערכה הכבדה. יהיו חללי מערכות ישראל עטורי הניצחון, חתומים בלב ישראל לדור דור. May the nation of Israel remember its sons and daughters, faithful and courageous, the soldiers of the Israel Defense Forces, and all members of the undergrounds and brigades, the warriors in the battles at sea, members of the intelligence community, security personnel, policemen, and those in the prison service, who gave up their lives in war to ensure the existence of Israel. And all of whom that were killed within Israel and outside of Israel at the hands of murderers and terrorists, may the nation of Israel and the Exalted One remember the radiance of the youthfulness, the delightfulness, heroism, purity of their will, and the selflessness of those who fell in the costly wars. May the fallen of the wars of Israel be crowns of victory, and may their names be inscribed upon the hearts of Israel for all generations.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, today we commemorate Yom Hazikaron, the day of general remembrance for the fallen soldiers of Israel's wars and the victims of terrorism. Today, 24 hours before rejoicing in the celebrations of our 73rd Independence Day, we stop to remember the fallen, who gave their lives in defense of Israel, and the innocent men, women, children, and elderly who were murdered in acts of indiscriminate terrorism just for being Israelis. The proximity between these two dates symbolizes more than anything the unbreakable bond between the pain felt in every home in Israel and the joy for our renewed independence. It would not be an overstatement to say that almost every person in Israel knows someone who has been affected by the consequences of our struggle for our freedom, if not personally someone who made this great sacrifice themselves. Today we remember our sons and daughters, sisters and brothers, grandchildren and friends, the heroes that without whose courageous sacrifice the sovereign Jewish state would not exist, the heroes who defended our homeland with courage and tenacity from our enemies. They are the ones who make the difference between a persecuted people and a people rooted in their land and masters of their own destiny. They are the shield of our only true home, the only place in the world where Jews can feel truly safe. Last week we remembered, like every year, the 6 million Jews who were exterminated by the Nazi regime and its collaborators. If today is a reminder of the price we have to pay for having an independent Jewish state, the Day of Remembrance for the victims of the Shoah reminds us of the price for not having one. Today, we also remember the countless victims of the infamous and indiscriminate terrorist attacks on buses, restaurants, markets, and universities, people whose lives were unjustly and abruptly taken from them. On a more personal note, I would like to take this moment to remember 2 friends and colleagues from the Israel Ministry of Foreign Affairs murdered by Palestinian terrorists. Orit Ozal, killed in a suicide bombing in the Moment Cafe in Jerusalem on March 9th, 2002, a bombing I wretchedly witnessed from my own balcony. And Diego David Ladovsky, murdered in a suicide bombing in the Hebrew University campus of Mount Scopus on July 31st of that same year, barely 10 days before he was set off to leave on his first diplomatic mission. May their memory be a blessing. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, if anyone requires a reminder of the unique condition in which the Jewish state finds itself even today, if anyone needs a reminder of the fact that Israel is the only country in the world whose existence is threatened, all they have to do is listen to the words of Iran's leaders, observe the actions of Hamas and Hezbollah, or pay attention to the legal warfare the Palestinian Authority is waging against Israel, including today. We said it in the past and we say it again today on this painful, sacred occasion. No one wants peace more than we do. This aspiration is enshrined in the Declaration of Independence of Israel. No one more than us wishes there be no more victims on either side of this conflict. But this peace will be achieved only if both sides honestly strive for it. And judging by what we repeatedly witness, it is hard for us to trust that the main objective of the Palestinians is not to destroy the Jewish state, rather than to build one of their own. This Israel cannot and will not accept. We have learned from our history. Though we will never be unsettled by them, we will never ignore those who call for our annihilation. After 73 years, perhaps it is time they finally understand they will not defeat us. To those who advise us to accept compromises and take considerable risks for peace, to all those who point their moralizing finger at us, we can only say, we value your friendship, but we are bitterly cognizant of its limits. Our history teaches us that we cannot afford to trust the good intentions of others again. In time of peril, only we will defend our people and our territorial integrity. Ladies and gentlemen, year after year throughout this solemn day, television channels in Israel display on their screen the long list of names of our fallen, one after the other. And the list is longer every year. Each of these names appear before our eyes for barely a few seconds, but they reflect a life lived, a story and loved ones left suddenly behind, together with countless dreams and plans. While the flags fly at half-mast in Israel and the siren that accompanies the minute of silence marking the beginning of this day has already sounded, let us all take a moment to thank these men and women and pay them a heartfelt tribute in the words of the Yizkor prayer for the fallen, for their love of heroism, sanctity of will, and devotion of the spirit in defending the freedom of our homeland. Iyu chalalei ma'archot Israel, aturei hanitzachon, chatumim belev Israel, ledor dor.
My name is Michael Polowin. I'm honored to be the chair of the Jewish Federation of Ottawa, and I'm equally honored to be speaking to you today on the occasion of Yom Hazikaron. When I was 9 years old, the Six-Day War broke out. And with my friends at Hillel Academy, we scoured maps of the Middle East and we planned battle plans, and we found the whole thing very glamorous, very much like the World War II movies that were prevalent at the time. When I was 15, the Yom Kippur War broke out. It was terrifying at first. But as Israel gained the upper hand, the feelings that had been there in 1967 came back. And the notion of the IDF as a glamorous adventure came back. But as we age, as we experience life, we begin to understand a difference. And by the time I became a parent, it was very different. And as my kids got older, more and more. In 2008, when my kids were 13 and 17, we went to Israel and we did the tourist tour of the country. And I have photographs of my kids climbing on tanks at the Tank Museum and in bunkers from the 67 war. And it, to them, seemed glamorous. And then one day we went to Metula. And in Metula, we visited a picnic site right on the border with Lebanon. There were Israeli troops on patrol. in the picnic site and a Hamas flag flying just over the border fence. When I asked my 17-year-old son if he wanted a photograph with the troops, I said, I'm sure they'd be happy to do it. He got visibly upset and he said no. And I asked him why later. And he said, because, Dad, this was real. These are kids my age. Like a lot of people, I have family in Israel. I have a cousin who I dearly love, has 4 boys. And as her sons took turns in the military, I worried for them at a distance. When one of them sat on the border of Gaza waiting for orders to go in, I really worried with her at a distance. And so as a parent, as an older person, we understand the meaning of what these young people have done for Israel and for the Jewish people. Thankfully, my family has suffered no losses, but many have. And that is what we remember on Yom Hazikaron. We honor the sacrifice of Israeli soldiers from the beginning in 1948 to today. We honor the loss of the victims of terrorism. And so none of this is glamorous as it was to a 9-year-old, but it is essential and it is a tragedy. So join with me as we honor those sacrifices.
אני זוכר שמבצע עופרת יצוקה, אני הייתי לוחם בסיירת גולני, ואלירז אחי היה קצין המבצעים של חטיבת גולני. ובאחד הימים אני נמצא בתוך חדר. פתאום אני שומע את הקול הצרוד המעושן של אלירז, מה קורה? אני זוכר את עצמי, טס מהחדר, ופשוט המבטים שלנו נפגשים, באותה שנייה כאילו אנחנו, מה עושים עם כל האהבה הזאת, ואז ישר בום, כאילו מכות אחד לשני, ואז בשלב מסוים אנחנו מתקרבים מספיק בשביל לחבק. זה כאילו איזה חיבוק כזה שמוציא לך את כל האוויר, אבל מפוצץ לך את הלבבות. שנינו כבר איבדנו אח. שאנחנו מכירים אותו במותו יותר טוב משהכרנו אותו בחייו. אני זוכר שזה בעצם היה בקיץ האחרון לפני שאורל נהרג, הוא לקח אותנו למפל יהודיה. בשלב מסוים הוא מעלה אותי על איזשהו מדף סלע, ואמא שלי מתחילה לצעוק, אוריאל, תיזהר, תוריד אותו, אוריאל. ואז אורל אומר לי, קפוץ. כי הוא רצה שאני אנצח את הפחד. אני קופץ. ואני חושב שאוריאל היה זה שקפץ למים ראשון במשפחה. ואוריאל הולך איתנו. אני חושב שאם אוריאל היה מסתכל עלינו באותו רגע מלמעלה, הוא אומר, בונה, זה האחים שלי הגיבורים, כאילו מצביע לאלוהים ולכל המלאכים, אומרים, חבר'ה, זה האחים שלי, כאילו. אלירז בשבילי זה קשר שאין לו סוף. זה הידיעה שיש מישהו שלא משנה מה. הוא יהיה שם בשבילי. כל כך הרבה זיכרונות נכנסו לרגע הזה. ואני זוכר שנסענו, וכל הנוף משתנה כזה, ונהיה הרבה יותר קדום כזה. באיזשהו שלב הנסיעה אלירז אומר לי שאני צריך לזכור שיש משהו שהוא יותר חזק מאיתנו, זה החיים. וגם אבא שהוא נפטר, הוא לא יכול לעצור את החיים שלי. והוא אומר לי, אל תדאג אחי, אני איתך. ואולי החיבוק הזה, אז הוא היה חיבוק שאלירז נתן לי בכיתה A, שהלכנו לנחל דוד, והוא התקדם לחיבוק הזה שקיבלתי ממנו, שעמדנו על התלולית אפר בבית ההרוס אחרי שאבא נפטר, ביום הגיוס שלי לצבא, שבאתי פעור וצעיר לפני הבקו"ם. אבל החיבוק לא השתנה, הוא נשאר חזק כמו שהוא. הוא נשאר כאילו, אני אוהב אותך. היום זה... אני מרגיש שאני שוחה בים של געגוע. שאני לא נותן לאף אחד להיכנס אליו. כי כל מי שיכנס אליו הוא ידבע. ואני שוחה ושוחה 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 ושוחה, ואני מחפש אותו על איזשהו חוף, אני מחפש אותו להגיע אליו.
Good evening. My name is Amiram Jakira, and I serve as Israel Defense Attaché to Canada as of the past summer. While the COVID-19 pandemic is raging and not yet defeated, it is impossible to us to meet physically. Indeed, there is no virtual substitute for real togetherness, a warm hug, and support of another. However, I do believe it is necessary to say a few words, and I am glad I have the opportunity to record them in advance. As I am sure you know, Israel will celebrate its 73rd independence in a short while, on the Jewish calendar date of 5th of Iyar. At this time of the year, the days become longer. Winter is coming to its end, as much as we can call our cool season in Israel winter, and weather, though unpredictable, is getting warmer. Wildflower bloom all over Israel just a few weeks before it gets too hot. And there is a sense of hopefulness and renewal as Passover comes near. What is Yom Hazikaron for Israelis? It is both very private, yet a collective day, in which we pause to visit and embrace the families of the fallen. We value the ultimate price paid for all of us to be able to live in relative calm. We visit military cemeteries to pay our respect. We stand to the sound of 2 sirens' alarm, piercing the silence and remembering our loved ones. We take part in communities and national ceremonies or local events, such as public singing of beautiful and sad Israeli music that touches everybody's heart. It is a day that begins with deepest sadness but ends with a great celebration of the successful outcomes, the establishment of the States of Israel. In this turning point, a few minutes after 8 p.m., at the end of the Remembrance Day, the flag all over Israel are raising back. It is preserved as the most Israeli moment of the year and pass a tremor in each one of us. The Israeli Defense Force, Tzahal, is truly the people's army. In Israel, all citizens must join to the military. Tzahal is a part of all of us. It is ours, it is our sisters and brothers, mothers and fathers, sons and daughters. Israel is a small country, strongly connected under common threat. Being in a military in Israel is not a profession, it is a mission, and a calling that every generation must answer in its turn. I want to share with you one personal story. I was born and raised in a kibbutz in the Upper Galilee, near the border of Syria and Lebanon. We were a small group of kids growing up together. One of my friends, Yossi Levi, was the son of the kibbutz physician, Dr. David Levi. Yossi enlisted the IDF to a special and elite unit and became an officer in the Egoz Special Operation Elite Unit. Yossi was killed while leading his soldier in operational activity in Lebanon on September 24, 1996. Yossi was known as a commander who had it all: leadership and charisma to lead wisely his soldiers, and was noble-minded man with perpetual smile, sensitivity, patience, and gentleness. My memories of Yossi are countless: shared childhood experience, playful and boundless innocence. Yossi was killed in Lebanese territory, several kilometers from our kibbutz, where we played and where our family lived. He died protecting his own, literally. Shlomit, Yossi's sister, is married to a friend of mine from the squadron. They are raising an amazing family. There are dozens of bereaved families in Canada. For them, as for Yossi's parents, David and Anat, there are no words that can comfort, and there is no cure for the pain. On Yom Hazikaron, we accompany the bereaved families and offer a hug, even if virtual. We remember the fallen, who they were, and who they will never be. This is the price that goes hand in hand with our ongoing daily lives. Israelis live in a liberal, open state, respecting freedom, preserving rights, thriving and welcoming. Without a doubt, the best place to live in the Middle East, and probably one of the best in the world. A young and vibrant democracy. Our economy is strong. Our life expectancy is among the highest in the world. Our industry is creative and innovative. Our technology is impressive on a global level, and our cultural scene is diverse and international. We have advanced agriculture, and we turn the desert green. This social, economic, and military power has also brought us peace with Egypt, Jordan, and in the last year, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Morocco, and Sudan. We have partial agreements with the Palestinians, and I hope that in the near future we can move forward for a real peace between neighbors. There is a spirit of change in the Middle East, bringing countries closer to understanding that it is worth accepting the existence of Israel and signing a peace and normalization agreement. I hope we will see soon more countries responding to Israel's hands for peace. Unfortunately, not everyone shares this understanding, and even today, the citizens of Israel face threats from far and from near, who challenge our existence and the way of life. From the Hamas organization in Gaza, calling for elimination of the states of Israel, to the terrorist organization Hezbollah, which has captured the Lebanese state as hostage and threatened Israel with thousands of missiles. In addition to this threat, we recognize Iran's dangerous effort to acquire nuclear weapons and to spread terrorism through militias operating in Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. In front of this threats stands the IDF, a skilled and professionally equipped military, which is constantly advancing in all areas of operation: land, sea, air, intelligence, cyber, and more. A military that draws its strength from the spirits of its people and Israel's just cause, the core of Israeli identity. This is the first year that I commemorate Yom Hazikaron abroad, and this is significant for me, thanks to the special relationships with the Jewish community in Canada. Your support to Israel in spirit, materials, and participation is a critical pillar for the Jewish state security. Strong Jewish leadership in our communities as well is important as well, and protect us all over the world. I'm proud to stand here as Colonel in the Israeli Air Defense Force and to speak to you. We remember with deep sorrow and appreciation those who serve and sacrifice for a prosperous Israel, for a safe homeland for all Jews of the world. May they rest in peace. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. Thank you.
מי שברך אבותינו אברהם, יצחק ויעקב, הוא יברך את חיילי צבא הגנה לישראל, העומדים על משמר ארצנו וערי אלוהינו, מגבול הלבנון ומדבר מצרים, ומן הים הגדול עד לבוא הערבה, ביבשה, באוויר ובים. ייתן אדוני את אויבינו הקמים עלינו נגבפים לפניהם. הקדוש ברוך הוא ישמור ויציל את חיילינו מכל צרה וצוקה ומכל נגע ומחלה, וישלח ברכה והצלחה בכל מעשה ידיהם, ידבר שונאינו תחתיהם, ויתרם בכתר ישועה ובעטרת ניצחון. ויקוים בהם הכתוב, כי אדוני אלוהיכם ההולך עמכם להילחם לכם עם אויביכם, להושיע אתכם, ונאמר Amen. May God who blessed our forefathers Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, bless the soldiers of the Israel Defense Forces who stand guard over our land and the cities of our God, from the border of Lebanon to the desert of Egypt, and from the Great Sea to the Arava, on land, in the air, and on the sea. May the Lord cause the enemies who rise up against us to be struck down before them. May the Blessed Holy One preserve and rescue our soldiers from every trouble and distress and from every plague and illness. And may God send blessing and success in their every endeavor. May God cause our enemies to submit before our soldiers, and may God grant them salvation and crown them with victory. And may they be fulfilled for them the verse, for it is the Lord your God who goes with you to battle your enemies for you to save you. And let us say,
התקיעה בחמאס על מנת להשיב את השקט לאזרחי ישראל. העם בגבכם, מחזיק לכם מחבלי החמאס והג'יהאד. סומך עליכם, בטוח ביכולתכם, צאו להתקפה, בהצלחה, סוף.
אזרחי ישראל, לב האומה כולה עם משפחות הנופלים. אנחנו כואבים את כאבכם. אנחנו מרכינים ראש בפני בנינו שנפלו, כדי שנוכל להמשיך לחיות כאן בארצנו. אני מבקש להביע בשם ממשלת ישראל, וכל עם ישראל, את הכאב העמוק שאנחנו חשים. אנחנו שולחים את תנחומינו להורים, לילדים, לבנות הזוג ולמשפחות של חיילי צה"ל שנפלו בקרב על הגנת מדינת ישראל. אני מבקש לומר לכם שאין מלחמה צודקת מזאת שבניכם, בנינו, נפלו בה בגבורה. בכל קרב, בכל מערכה, יש אירועים מורכבים וקשים, וכך גם במערכה הנוכחית. אבל יחד עם זאת, הפעולה הצבאית מתקדמת כמתוכנן, והיא תתרחב ככל שידרש, עד שהשקט ישוב לאזרחי ישראל. למשפחות היקרות אני מבקש לומר, אני מודע לדאגה שלכם. כולנו שותפים לה. אנחנו עושים הכל כדי לשמור על חיי האזרחים שלנו, וכן גם על חיי החיילים שלנו.
שוכן במרומים, המצא מנוחה נכונה, תחת כנפי השכינה, ומעלות קדושים טהורים וגיבורים, כזוהר רקיע, מזהירים לנשמות חיילי צבא ההגנה לישראל, שנלחמו בכל מערכות ומלחמות בישראל, ומסרו נפשם על קדושת השם, העם והארץ. לכן הבעל הרחמים יסתירם בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמותיהם. אדוני הוא נחלתם, וינוחו בשלום על משכבותיהם. ונאמר אמן. O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all our sons command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
קולות בלבב בנימה,
נפש יהודית